The Hellblade 2 reviews are here, and they're sort of all over the place. Some are calling the game a masterpiece, a triumph, giving it very high scores. Other scores are landing pretty low, with some saying the game hasn't really advanced since the first, other than being much better looking in the graphical department, but combat and gameplay have taken a bit of a downturn, according to some of the reviews that I've checked out. Also, the runtime of the game seems to be landing shorter than the first game. Most people completing the first game somewhere around 8 hours. This one we're hearing clear times of like 5 to 6 hours. Even some of the reviews I watched, like Maddie Plays, said when he felt like the game was about to really sort of turn the corner and really get better, it was basically coming to a close. So we're going to give you a Hellblade 2 review roundup. We're going to sort of monitor Metacritic throughout the show and OpenCritic, see where it lands. Where's it landing on Steam? I'm going to look at the reviews that are low, that are high, and then the ones in between. I will also be checking out Hellblade 2 on PC, a gameplay stream separate from this. So if you are watching this later and you want to see my live reaction to playing the game myself, I am a huge fan of the first game, and I'm very concerned from what I am hearing that the game turned out to be more of a technical showcase of Unreal and graphics, while certain elements took a back seat, like game length and gameplay and combat. And that is not something I want to hear. We're even hearing things like there are sections that feel incredibly padded. Maddie Plays talked about a section where you're just running around and lighting torches for what he said felt like close to an hour. And in the game that only takes 5 or 6 hours to complete, that's a little disconcerting. So to the live audience, a little bit of a change of format. We did this with Stellar Blade. We really liked the way that it felt, just kicking off the day with a review roundup and then jumping into the game afterward. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Make sure you guys are pushing that like button, man. There's a lot of you here already 100 likes on the video. Thank you so much. I did try something a little different this morning as well. I had the live stream scheduled for a good bit, about 44 minutes, so that you guys could pile in and get ready. And Joker Quinn starts the day. Han shot first, and so did you. First gifted member of the day. If you guys hit 400 members before Friday, we will do a scary horror VR game. And I have figured out the microphone. You'll be able to hear me while I am playing. I figured it out last night. I can run it through the mixer, and it actually sounded pretty good. So help us hit that goal this week. That puts us at 59 for the week. Already a good chunk with the thing. Yeah, ACG's review was more positive. Old Dad Gamer saying ACG took him about 9 hours. Others are reporting like 5 to 6. ACG also seemed to enjoy the game a lot more. So maybe he took his time. Maybe he was just sort of using photo mode and sort of, basking in the beauty of the game. ACG said it was a buy, but he also said it. He qualified it. He said, if that's what you're looking for, it's basically more Hellblade, right? I don't want to put words in his mouth, but essentially he sort of qualified it. He says, if that's something you're okay with, get this on Game Pass or buy it. That way you know what you're signing up for, okay? He wasn't basically giving it like a blank check of endorsement. He sort of qualified it a little bit. Crinab, thank you so much for renewing your membership. Welcome back. Your membership got reset or something? Yes, like every 90 days sometimes you have to renew your membership like manually. It's kind of weird. Mike on the mic with the gifted member. Thank you so much. Lono play on the Series X? No, I will not be playing it on the Series X. I don't play 30 FPS games. So I will be playing it on my PC. I already booted it up. I didn't play. I just sort of started it to see what it was going to do. It seems like I'm going to be able to run it at 1440 medium on the presets. 1440 medium with DLSS. I should be able to hit and maintain 60. I'm kind of hoping. I have a 2080 Ti rig that I obviously am looking into upgrading soon, but I don't do a whole lot of PC gaming because I usually am gaming in my living room. I was trying to finish Stellar Blade before today and just wasn't able to because I was on vacation last week and was only able to play a couple of times on my PlayStation Portal. So, yeah. The first Hellblade was great because it was a small independent studio. We were expecting more backed by Microsoft's money. There's a lot that goes into this, so let's just quickly give you guys kind of the scoop on where the game is presently landing. It has an 81 on Metacritic, and that's from 74 reviews. Now, let me refresh this to see if we've got any more that have come in. No, we have not, so 74. And then over here on OpenCritic, we're seeing it land at an 82, and 80% of the critics recommend. You can see there is a huge just disparity in the scores here. PC Gamer giving it a 58. We're seeing 9s, 7s, 6s, 5 out of 10. I mean, the scores are all over the place. Christopher Wright with 31 months and the VIP, welcome back. So, it's all over the place, right? And Eugene's pointed out that it's getting the same score as the first. My frustration with where the game is landing and what I'm hearing is when they started talking about the game, showing the game in 2019, looked really impressive, looked like it was going to be a bigger game. They're now owned by Microsoft. Okay, here we go. We're going to get a really proper, just amazing sequel. And then they showed the beach scene, and it seemed almost unbelievable. And I've been told by people on Twitter, they're like, you'll be happy to know the beach cave sequence is in the game. I'm like, okay. Because they started showing us more stripped-down gameplay, and I was like, I really hope they didn't gut the bigger environments or the bigger areas. And somebody was like, no, you'll be happy to know the beach and the cave scene is in there, because I was like, I don't think it's going to make it. I think they had to strip the game down when they moved to Unreal 5. The fact that the game isn't any longer than the first game and is seemingly landing shorter, that to me is concerning. The fact that it's doing that while also having what's been described as pretty padded areas, I'm like, okay, so without those padded areas, it sounds like the game would be incredibly short, like really short, shorter than it already is. And that's upsetting, because it's like, I kept telling people, I was like, they haven't had enough time. They were not in full production in 2021. So I was worried. I had people saying, I had people last year saying, Hellblade II is coming out this year. I'm like, there's literally no way that's possible. In the middle of 2021, the CEO said they weren't even in full production yet. It's a small studio. That's a small window of time. And I was concerned. It sounds like they didn't have enough time. I really don't think they did. I know they put out their little message yesterday. That reads like a farewell message, like they're anticipating being shut down. Jez Corden is saying that they've already had their next project greenlit, but he's also the one that drew attention to the fact after Tango Gameworks was closed down. He was like, wait, Hellblade's about to launch with a digital-only release, no physical, and it's a small team, and it's a small game, and he was concerned. I don't know when he heard about the next project being greenlit. Was it after he sent that tweet? Who knows? This game was built in 3 years. Right, and for me, 3 years is not enough time to build a proper sequel when you're doing what they were trying to do. They were really focusing on things like mocap and facial expressions and this very cinematic experience and really wanting the graphics to be awesome. And it's like, well, that 3 years? That seems incredibly short. So let's look at some of the reviews here. And so what we're going to do is, I've got a couple pulled up here. And this one here comes from GameSpot. This is one of the more negative reviews. Okay, this is one of the more lower reviews. Now, Games Radar, on the other hand, is a higher review that we're going to be looking at. And then sort of in the middle is this 4 out of 5, but they are calling it excellent. 4 out of 5 is an 8, so we've got an 8, which is not, a perfect. Here's a 5 out of 5, and then this one's fairly low. So we're gonna be taking a look at these and just sort of seeing what people are saying. When we did this with Stellar Blade, there were certain elements that started to stand out. Let's see if we can get this into a single column. There we go. And just wanting to kind of see what people are saying. So they do a recap here about the first game. They talk about, my biggest concern after Microsoft purchased Ninja Theory was that the next entry in the Hellblade series would aim to be one of the massive AAA experiences that are taking over the games industry, complete with cluttered minimap, crafting, side quests, and more. That's not to say these features are inherently bad. They do have their place, but for me, this felt at odds with what Hellblade did so well. I didn't want breadth. I wanted the series to maintain its depth. I wanted emotion, art, storytelling, introspection, mythos, terror, and magic. In fact, I was so concerned that the studio would trade its depth for breadth, I didn't foresee what actually happened. Now, see, I was never concerned with that. I don't think there was ever a point in time where I thought, they're going to do some big open world thing and they're going to turn it into Assassin's Senua or something, like Assassin's Creed bloat, map bloat or something. I was not concerned with that ever. Even that first trailer, I thought, oh, they're going to give us bigger environments. They're going to give us bigger experiences. So I'm not sure. I think they were just mainly thinking that maybe that's what Microsoft would try to do. But with a small studio, I don't think that was really a reasonable fear. So let's see what they say. Rather than expanding its systems and scope or weaving a story equal parts intimate and mystical, Senua's Sage, Hellblade 2 focuses on vastly improving what its predecessor already did so well, visuals and sound. Hellblade 2 is a marvel to look at. It's gorgeous, cinematic, and hyper-realistic, yet still eerie and ethereal. Its music remains extraordinary, and its sound design is primed to make your skin crawl. And yet, I cannot help but be disappointed by how pared down and shallow its story and gameplay are. While Hellblade 2 might be a sight to behold, its minimal gameplay and muddled narrative prevent it from being a game that has any meaningful impact on me. So that's concerning for me as a fan of the first game to read that, they feel like the gameplay is minimal. We're hearing that consistently across the board. I'm seeing reviews out there. I'm seeing quotes from reviews out there that are really highlighting the fact that, there's very minimal gameplay. There's a lot of sections where you're just kind of watching the gameplay itself. Also, the fact that they're saying the narrative's muddled, I really hope that's not true. I hope that's just subjective to the person that wrote this, because the story in the first game is very special to me. I loved it. I've played the game multiple times. It's very near and dear to me as a person who prizes mental health and has been through my own sort of psychological journey and spiritual journey through life. And so hearing that, I hope that these reviews put my expectations sort of squarely on the ground, and then I can only go up from there. That's kind of what I'm hoping happens here. Plague Tale's a good analog, says Eugene. First game was smaller and simpler, heavy story game. The second took the formula of the first and they expanded, they improved. Doesn't seem like we got that with Hellblade 2. And I'm going to blame the development time, right? I'm going to blame the development time. I don't think they had enough time with this game. I really and truly don't. I'm going to continue to come back to that. I've said that for years. I had somebody on Twitter telling me that I had been hyping up the game for years. It's like, no, I haven't. I said that the gameplay looked good in the one trailer because everybody was absolutely lighting it on fire, and I thought that it looked good. I can only base my opinion on the little that I saw, but I continued to tell people that I was concerned. I said, I don't think the game is ready. I don't think they've had enough time. I said that last year numerous times when people said, Hellblade 2 is coming this year. I said, there's no way. I said, even next year feels too early. I said that multiple times last year as a huge fan of Hellblade. I said, I don't think they've had enough time. I feel like 2024 is too fast. Yes, they announced it in 2019, but if you track the development process of this game, they were not in full production in the middle of 2021. It's May of 2024. They barely had 3 years to work on this game full production. That's not enough time, in my opinion, for a small studio, especially when they're aiming at doing all of the graphical things that they aimed at. Senua Saga picks up not long after Senua's Sacrifice and follows our heroine as she sets off to confront the Northmen who keep raiding her lands and enslaving her people. She sees this not solely as a chance to do what's right, but as a way to atone for the sins she's still convinced she's committed. She committed. A way to wash off the blood that she can't help but see on her hands. However, Senua soon discovers that vengeance is not so simple, and a decision that condemns and brutalizes one group could mean safety and survival to another. I don't want to read a bunch about the plot because I told you guys that we were going to have a spoiler-free element here, so I don't want to get into that. So let's go down here. I heard it argued that the original Hellblade's puzzles in combat were nothing extraordinary. I'd say that's fair, as the game primarily focused on deep introspective storytelling. But considering Hellblade 2 doesn't have that, I had some hope for new and improved mechanics that might lie in store for us. Instead, things have been pared back. Just about every battle is the same. You face off against an enemy, parry their attack, press a button to kill them, then engage with the next one. Whereas in the previous game, you had to navigate the field, manage multiple enemies, and could kick and fight a bit more dynamically. All of this has been cut in favor of circling around a single enemy until you can get in a parry. We heard this from the previews. It obviously was a big concern of mine that they had for some reason, they had stripped down they had stripped down the combat into these little 1v1 engagements, and that it would be somewhat rote and rehearsed. The fact that we have less moves, I'm hearing that there's like less things that you can do. I don't understand that either. You know, I saw new moves in the trailer. I saw new attacks, so I'm confused as to why they would take things away. It's clear that the reason for this new combat system is to make battles more scripted and cinematic, as it's easy to incorporate tense moments, rolls, combos, dramatic deaths, and more when the player is limited to hitting a couple buttons against a single opponent in a very small space. But the big problem here, well, other than the combat itself, is that several games have proven that fights can feel choreographed and cinematic while allowing players to engage with enemies in more meaningful ways. Combat in Hellblade II feels not just like an afterthought, but virtually non-existent. In fact, I'd argue that the end result feels similar to a QuickTime event, yet more tedious. I heard this. Maddie touched on this. Didn't feel like there was enough combat. But then ACG and IGN seemed to think that the combat felt very tight and felt very good. I don't know why you would strip everything down to 1v1. Again, the first game, there were some really amazing moments, especially when you're in the river of like fire or blood down in hell, and all those guys keep coming up to you and kind of surrounding you. I'm reading things like the end of combat is on rails and you aren't the one actually finishing the kill. The flashy stuff is scripted in the mocap. Right, and I remember hearing that during the previews that everything was mocapped, every animation. And I thought to myself, why do they keep saying that? Why do they keep stressing that every part of the fighting is mocapped, like all of the animations? Gene Park said the combat system is a regression. Yeah, I saw Gene saying that on Twitter. Appreciate Gene and you know some of his contributions lately to commentary on gaming. I like Gene, and saw him saying that, and then saw Matty Plays saying something similar. He felt like it was a step back from the first game, and I like going to Matty because I feel like Matty's gotten some unfair treatment because of the fact that he likes Xbox and he likes Bethesda, but he also, I feel like, has been very critical of things that they've done, and he kind of got roped into the stupid Redfall nonsense, which I still think he came back and at least tried to warn people about it. He didn't I don't feel like he came back and tried to do PR like some other people did. And so I went to Matty and I was like, what's Matty saying? Because he says he feels like he gets hate from both sides, which I kind of feel that because I was looking forward to this game and I was getting a lot of grief from people who were like hoping it was crappy. Big Evil with 17 months says, genuinely hope it's not true and have fun with the game. Know how long you've waited for it. Yeah, okay, well, here's some puzzle stuff. Solving puzzles is just a simple process and mainly consists of finding ways to distort reality in order to gain access to new areas and vantage points. From there, you will find hidden runes to aid your progress. It's slightly less tedious, but none of the puzzles scattered throughout the game are particularly engaging or difficult, meaning you never feel challenged or particularly satisfied with yourself. I'm less concerned with the puzzles. Right? Like, if they nailed combat and story, I would have been like, it's okay if the puzzles are very basic. You see what I'm like? I don't think that would have been as big of a deal, but it's just one more log in the fire. If the combat's disappointing and feels like a regression, if the story is kind of muddled and not as good as the first. I said this many, many times leading up to this. I said that my concern was they would focus so much on graphics and production that that's all we would get. Is a very highly produced, right, highly polished technical test, right? And the concern there is obviously that all these other things start to take a back seat when you really focus on making the game a showcase of technical prowess. So these were my concerns leading up to it, was that the more we heard about it and the more they talked about it, when we came out of the previews, I thought, are you kidding me? None of this sounds encouraging, right? I thought the puzzles in the first were very good. Yes, I will be doing a second stream. I will be playing the game. I've got it installed on Steam. It's ready to go. It looks like I'll be able to play to like a 1440-60 with like sort of the presets set to medium. Reviews are subjective. You may love it regardless. Well, here's the point, James. I don't disagree with what you're saying, that I may end up loving it anyway. However, everything I'm hearing is exactly what I was concerned about. I was concerned that it would take a step back in length and in gameplay. Those are the two things I was worried about. I was like, it needs to be at least the same length, if not a little bit longer than the first game. And it needs to be an uptick in gameplay. That's what I was hoping for. I don't want to play a sequel that has those things turned down. And that's what I'm consistently hearing from people that have played it. Now, I've heard from people that are like, if you loved the first one, you will like this. And I'm like, I really hope that's the case. I hope all the things I'm reading lower my expectations, and then I end up enjoying it anyway. That's what I'm hoping for. Given the game's length, we might be able to, beat it today. Why not read positive reviews? Oh, I have positive reviews. Don't worry. This is just the first one. I've got a low one. I've got a 5 out of 5, and then I've got one kind of in the middle. Russell Stewart says, technical test. They found out they can't do 60 FPS on the X. I hope they're happy with the results. Yeah. Well, and that's another thing that I think is a bit of is some salt in a wound of, well, the guys that bought the Xbox Series X are once again not getting a 60 FPS game, and for what? And for what? Right? Like, do you see, like, it was the same frustration I had with Starfield. It was like, well, what did you get? What did you get in exchange for getting old performance? For getting 30 FPS? What did you get? In Hellblade 2, what did you get? Oh, it's beautiful. Who cares if it's blurry when the minute you move because it's 30 FPS? Like, who cares about that? And yeah, and apparently it drops to 20 FPS in spots. I remember people losing their minds about Zelda Tears of the Kingdom dropping to 20 FPS. And I'm like, it's a freaking Nintendo Switch. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's a handheld. Of course it's going to struggle with big open areas and lightning and rain. This should not be happening on the Series X. Now, they say here, this isn't to say Hellblade 2 is devoid of any remarkable features. In fact, you'd be hard-pressed to find a more visually striking first-party Xbox title. From its lighting and framing to the hyper-realism of its characters and locations, every bit of Hellblade 2 feels cinematic and spectacular. Whereas its story and systems could use some love, it's abundantly clear that these environments, from the animal skulls that adorn dilapidated houses to the towering mountains and vast oceans that extend past where the eye can see, were completely adored by the team. Similarly, the game's motion capture and performances are next level, with each of the game's main cast bringing a level of melodrama and tension to the game that elevates the script that is otherwise a bit flat and predictable. Yeah, I am hearing from even the more negative reviews that the performances are phenomenal, which I'm not surprised. Melina Juergens is fabulous. Like, I love her, and I really hope that I can walk away from this and give the game a good score and give her the praise that, I think she deserves for what she brings to the character, what she brings to the art form of voice acting and performances in video games. I think she's elevated the craft. I really do. I would argue that. I would really argue that she's elevated the craft of bringing acting into the art form of video games. And probably other voice actors are challenged by her work. I would not doubt that at all. You could ask some of the more experienced voice actors and performers, and they would probably say, yeah, she really pushes you to want to be better if you watch her performance in the first game as well as in this one. You won't enjoy it for long anyway. You'll be done in 3 hours. Right. The game's sound, design, and music are perhaps even more notable, though the most obvious praise is leveled at the game's binaural audio. I think that's how you say that, binaural. There are so many other elements that come together alongside this choice that elevate it. The deep groans of rotting buildings and shrieks of villagers in pain are so realistic they feel palpable. Senua's up close and breathy panic inspires instant tension, while far off, guttural singing strikes fear. Through the combat, though the combat itself might be subpar, the music that plays while Senua faces off against a Draugr is intense and riveting. And then they here. Let's just scroll down. Well, let's give their conclusion. But I am going to look at this scroll down here. So they're giving it a 6. They're calling it fair. Okay. Yeah, they're giving it a 6. They're calling it fair. They're saying good. Impressive visuals, motion capture, and performances make for a striking cinematic experience. Music and overall sound design triumph at elevating tension and emotion. Now, the bad. Shallow, muddled storytelling falls short in offering a unique or introspective experience. Extremely minimal gameplay with simple puzzles and flat combat. Set pieces, encounters, story beats, and gameplay quickly grow repetitive. I don't know why anybody's saying ACG's pro Xbox. I think he leans to being just more positive in general as a content creator, but I don't think he's like pro Xbox. Hey Lono, been a while since I've been in a stream. Just want to say I love the content. Played about 2 hours so far, and I love the game. Yeah, I'll be playing it. I will be playing it, and I really hope I end up enjoying it. This is one of my most anticipated games this year, so I'm hearing a lot of consistency in the reviews that gives me concern. While few games can rival Hellblade II sound, graphical fidelity, and talent for rendering stunning vistas and characters so expressive you can tell when they're tensing their jaws, I couldn't help thinking how gorgeous the game would be if it was depicted. If what was depicted was more varied. There are a few memorable set pieces I won't spoil, but even compared to its predecessor, which led players through tombs, raised towns, haunted woods, chamber halls, and let them face off against giants, a rotting boar, towering stag-headed monsters, and God of Illusions, there is surprisingly little variation in Hellblade 2's settings and monsters. Though the caves Senua crawled through succeed in inducing the claustrophobia the game warns you about at its start, large chunks of the game take place surrounded by stone that's not entirely appealing. It's yet another substance problem in a game that is regrettably full of them. Based on its new naming convention, the use of Saga in Hellblade 2's title, and Microsoft's acquisition of developer Ninja Theory following the success of Senua's Sacrifice, it seems as if Hellblade is slated to be a series as well as a staple of Xbox's first-party lineup. That said, at this point, I don't exactly understand where the series is headed, if not to the box office. There are plenty of games that prove games can be art, but as some studios lean harder into proving that one specific way that cribs from Hollywood, we're seeing some games that feel afraid of being games. With too much focus on cinematics and too little on creating an experience that is engaging, Senua Saga fails to reach the same highs as its predecessor, even if it does look stunning while trying. Yeah, that tracks with Maddie's. This very much tracks with Maddie's review. Very much so. Now let's read a positive review, okay? So Games Radar has given it a 5 out of 5. Guys, do me a favor, before we go on to the next review, do me a favor and just take a quick second and smash that like button. There's almost 900 people here, and I greatly appreciate you piling in. It's a safe for work channel. It's basically a podcast Monday through Friday. You're watching Reforge Gaming. I'm doing a Hellblade 2 review roundup, and we will be jumping into Hellblade 2 gameplay for our second stream today. So make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you hit the bell button so you don't miss the content. But that like button is extremely helpful. So let's set our sights on 300 likes. That's an easy milestone with almost 900 people. And we got a goal this week. On the member goal, every 25, I give 5. So throughout the stream, you might get a gifted member from me or the people here. You can also move this number by just joining by yourself. You don't have to wait for a gifted member. But the more often you're here, the more likely you will get one. And we have a big goal for the week, 400 members, and I have to play a scary VR game on Friday night. We figured out the mic situation so you'll be able to hear me talking, and then my wife will be there as well. That Friday night streams are pretty good. Okay, so Games Radar gives it 5 stars and says it's nothing short of video game sorcery. Okay, so right here off the top, they give you their summary pros and cons. Haunting, confrontational, deeply cathartic all at once, Senua Saga Hellblade 2 is a stunning feat of video game art. Ninja Theory doesn't tiptoe around its heavy themes, but welcomes them with well-honed empathy, tempered by an even keener creative edge this time around to deliver an unforgettable narrative adventure experience that is hard to watch, yet harder to turn away from. So their pros, they only have one con. Pacing can feel inconsistent. This is something Matty Plays talked about. You know, he touched on the fact that it was, the pacing felt a little funky. Is he reading comments from this chat? Asks Austin Tucker. Yeah, what did you have a question? What's the question? Will this game make or break Xbox? I mean, I don't think there's a make or break Xbox. I think Xbox is changing entirely in their strategy, and I don't think they were setting their future hopes of existence on Hellblade 2. The pros: photorealistic graphics and binaural sound design creates visceral immersion. Hints of traditional narrative structure adds more depth between the varied puzzles, and then a scarier, tighter, more impressive sequel elevates both the series and the genre as we know it. This might be the most unique game I've ever experienced. The first game was a grueling character study. Its sequel presents the character with the future beyond the trauma of her past. Okay, they got the mental health stuff. I just want to get to... So here they talk about the Furies played a central role in the first game, giving voice to the psychosis inherited from her mother in a refreshing spin on the sins of the father literary concept that causes her to question reality and constantly risk losing herself to harrowing memories. Ninja Theory astounds in Hellblade 2 by taking these threads and running with them, immersing as well as educating the player with unflinching honesty. Now, I saw ACG talk about that part of the game, and he said that he really liked how much more the voices were involved. Like, you'll meet somebody new, and they'll be like, hey, you know, don't trust this guy, you can't trust him, things like that. So, like, they're a little bit more involved this time around. And he played one little sample, and I thought it sounded pretty good. So, from hearing the dying gasp of a ghostly figure as it chokes on its own blood somewhere on your left to the rumbling snarl of an enemy lurking just ahead, Hellblade 2 has you constantly torn between the world within and without. Ninja Theory does well to make the external world an even harsher place to exist in than the largely metaphorical environs. Why wouldn't you just say environments of Hellblade: Senua Sacrifice? Photorealistic graphics aid this, with craggy shorelines and snow-capped mountains emerging from the fog as you lock into combat with the slave trader you mean to capture, his eyes glinting with an all too human menace. The voices that separate the experience from anything else. Yeah, I really do think that the sound design and the voices are one of the things that really made me love the first one so much. It's an amazing immersion touch point. It's an incredibly realistic encounter that feels a far cry from battling horned beasts in Senua Sacrifice, further enhanced by how the Furies' voice still chatter at you while you're conversing with said slaver moments later. Painted against the background of real actors, costumes, and on-location set pieces that have all been scanned digitally prior to animation, Hellblade 2 expertly presents her form of psychosis as an internal stream of consciousness, ever torn between the freedom of telling the truth and the fears of being maligned for it yet again. At the same time, her mental state and the unique perspective it grants for her has become Senua's greatest weapon. We see this reflected in the range of environmental puzzles, markedly varied from those in Hellblade 1, that turn this dark fantasy adventure into a sophisticated narrative experience. Greater stress is placed on world exploration in this sequel, foregoing the maze-like cyclical pathways of the original game in favor of an interconnected series of villages and locations, each encompassing a chapter in a story that extends far beyond the locus of Senua. She fits into things as a cipher of sorts, but Senua is searching for more than merely sigils in a world around her. See, I wonder if that's why people are really sort of hammering on the fact that it's very linear feeling, because in the first game, I think because of the way the paths were winding and tight and you couldn't really see where you were going, I think that added to the mystery and the mystique, and I wonder if it's so much more obvious that it's a linear game because you have these interconnected series of villages and locations, and so it doesn't feel as... it's not as withholding. You know what I'm saying? It's like you have a greater sense of where you're going and where the next area is or something. I don't know. I'd have to play it to see. But I remember liking that in the first game. It was very... The corridor, turn the corner and discover a new area or new section. I think that added to the haunting nature of Hellblade 1. You could take multiple paths in the opening of the first as well. Yeah, there were like little offshoots and things you could go look for stuff, and there'd be nothing there. You would just like go and like, oh, there's nothing over here. And it made it feel like you could get lost a little bit, or you could find something like a rune. I think that was good in the first game. Now, I'm not saying that it's a problem in the second game that they're not doing that, I just noticed in a couple of the reviews that I read and listened to that they really talked about how it felt very linear. It felt very just like straightforward. You're just kind of going from one place to the next. Which I think is okay, but I think when you can sense that, it can take away from the game, the player's enjoyment, of the player's immersion too, if you just sort of feel like, okay, it's time to go to the next place now. Sometimes Senua has to flip the world around entirely, altering the level design of each individual puzzle to gain access to areas beyond her reach. Other instances call on her to step through time and witness a place from an entirely different perspective, giving her a greater grasp of why and how its inhabitants were forced to seek extreme measures to combat dire straits. The creative applications of Senua's psychosis as both an internal and external framework reinforces Ninja Theory's commitment to ethical representation, charging Hellblade II with meaningful conversations around mental health in a way that feels dynamic, authentic, and structurally fluid in the context of a video game. Environs is surrounding fringe area, not just environment. I don't think I've ever seen anybody use the term environs, like environs, like environment, environments, biomes, but environs. I don't know if I've ever seen people use that term in a review before when talking about a video game. I think that's like the first time I've ever seen that. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say it. It even kind of sounds like it sounds like an odd word, you know. They go on here to talk about the realism, right? The first footing in realism and sincere human experience is juxtaposed by elements of fantasy, broadening the lore of Hellblade II by leaning into the mythology of its Icelandic setting. Despite one chapter feeling overtly long in comparison to its 5 or so others, however, one element never seems to outweigh the other. It excels at both a dark fantasy horror tinged adventure game and groundbreaking psychological case study, delivering a masterclass in technical and thematic maturity that proves why Ninja Theory is the only studio that could have pulled it off in the first place. Oh, this is what I was gonna say when I stopped before reading that paragraph. Yeah, if you're not aware, they took it very seriously, showcasing the psychosis of what that would be like. They took great care in the first game to do that with the audio, the spatial audio, the binaural audio, and the various voices. And so it sounds like this review from Games Radar, they feel as if they've done that again. They've taken that very seriously. So I hope that's an excellent aspect of the game. While some of the reviews, the negative review we just got done reading from Gamespot was basically like the story and the narrative's kind of muddled, which is surprising hearing somebody say that about Hellblade as a sequel. So at its very core, Hellblade 2 is a harrowing. Oh, it is as harrowing as it is immensely important. You will find the smiles few and far between, if at all. This is a game that leans into atmospheric horrors and an overwhelmingly sensory portrayal of struggle and sacrifice. Still, Ninja Theory does not intend to traumatize the player. Moments of respite can be found following the most emotionally turbulent moments, speaking directly to the player to offer hope of new beginnings. You earned this, the furries soothe as Senua steps into a field awash with golden light. Video games so rarely take mental health aftercare this seriously, but Ninja Theory dares to take the important first step in Hellblade 2. Okay. That's the end of the review. So here's the thing. I really appreciate Jasmine's perspective. I think this is probably helpful in seeing why some people are loving the game and giving it really high scores and others are not. She made virtually no mention of gameplay as far as like combat and, you know, did they elevate the game's, you know, move sets and gameplay elements. For her, it seems that Jasmine might be similar to me in how I experienced the first game. Like, the first game was very much an experience more than it was a game. I've consistently told that to people. I'm like, it's not just a game, it's more of an experience. So I could see why. Oh, you want the member count? Sorry. There it is. I could see why she gave it such a high score. It sounds like it sort of checked the boxes, experiential boxes that Jasmine was hoping to experience. And I can respect that. Like, I can respect somebody going into the game and being like, I really want to just have an amazing sort of psychological, mental health focused experience, because the first game really does that, I think, in such a good way. So I get why she gave it a significantly higher score than GameSpot, and you can see it in the pros, right? I almost said at the beginning of this that, oh wow, there's no mention of like gameplay or combat here, other than a brief mention of like varied puzzles, right? So ACG pointed out that you can't practice your sword swings. Yes, he did point that out. He basically said that it just seemed kind of weird. He said that, some of the timing can be kind of tough, and you can only practice the timing when you're basically in a fight. And MASH with the 20 bomb comes in, takes us to 22. This guy's going to hit the goal this week all by himself. Good night. That's a big one. Thank you so much, MASH. You guys have been letting this guy carry the member count on his back lately. Appreciate you so much, MASH. If you guys just got a gifted membership, be sure to say thank you to MASH. It means you get into the daily writer's room where we plan these shows. You get to see behind the scenes. You get to come on Friday night streams where I stream with my wife. If we hit the weekly goal this week, I will be playing a scary VR game, and we have figured out the microphone. You'll be able to hear me while I'm playing, and it should be pretty fun. People like to see me get scared. The real question is, should a video game be reviewed like this? I mean, it's a video game, so it should be reviewed as one. Well, I'm gonna defend Games Radar and the author Jasmine for a second. I think it's totally okay to review the game in this way, because this is not a traditional game. Hellblade is not a traditional game. The first game is not a traditional game, and Hellblade 2 is certainly not a traditional game. So you almost have to review it as it exists. Now, that doesn't mean that you're gonna like it. Right? That doesn't mean you're going to like it. If you read her review, you can clearly see what she thought was awesome. And a single comes in from Joker Quinn to take us to 23. And Cat hits the 20 bomb as well. Unbelievable. We got to go. Wait, where are my alerts? I must not have them turned on here. Let me go back out here. We got to have the 20 bomb pop out for Kat, and she takes us to 43. But then we go to 48 because a 5 bomb comes in from SSJ Gohan, which puts us 2 away from 50. I'm going to owe you guys 10, but another 5 bomb comes in from Sheriff Bruce Lee. They're like, if you have to play a scary VR game and we can hear you getting scared like a baby, we want to see that, Lono. 53 members already on the day, adding to the total from yesterday. We had 58 yesterday, so that is 111. Yes, 111 members already. A goal of only 400. You guys have taken a huge chunk out of it already. Define video game if you want to be reviewed as a video game. Yeah, Dan says, good thing you put up the counter. Yeah, thank you, Dan, for reminding me to do that. Right, like, to me, I think this is okay, because you can read this review, and you can be like, okay, I get why Jasmine liked it. I'm not going to like the game. That's not what I'm looking for, right? It's not a traditional game, and she enjoyed the aspects that were more on the psychological, mental health, immersion, experiential, like that's the stuff that she praised, which, if we're honest, that's what Ninja Theory's good at. You know what I mean? Mash says, I think diversity, opinionated reviews from multiple outlets is most important in games like this for informed consumers. Right, you're informed right now as a consumer. You may kind of vibe with games the way that the author of this review does. Do you know what I'm saying? You may. So this may vibe with you. Now, let's go to PC Magazine. Now, they gave it a 4 out of 5. That's an 8, basically, like an 80, and they're calling it excellent. All right? They're saying slice through self-doubt. And here is the bottom line. Hellblade 2 is essentially an interactive art house action movie that combines potent gameplay elements with a visceral psychological journey. And here are the pros. Superb psychological storytelling, brutal action, suffocating atmosphere, tight runtime. Cons: numerous stretches featuring little or no interactivity. Combat lacks complexity. This is interesting. They consider the tight runtime a pro. No, I've not seen anybody say that yet. That's interesting. That's where they landed on it. Okay, so they do a summary of the first one. You once again enter the mind. I don't want any spoilers. They worked with doctors to accurately portray the psychology. Okay, that's great. We know this. Here we go. This is a good place to start. In general, pursuing expensive, realistic graphics and modern game releases has increasingly diminishing returns. However, I can't deny that Senua Saga's copious amounts of motion capture, scanned real-world locations, and painstaking detail look fantastic. The realism also makes the eventual unreal elements more ethereal and unnerving, as if you are losing your mind. It's good that Senua Saga is so nice to look at because there are many relatively long stretches of walking, observing, and listening. It's commendable that the development team prioritized artistic intent over immediately fun moment-to-moment gameplay. That said, Tales of Kensera Zhao strikes a better balance. You must approach Senua Saga on its own terms, and that means accepting an immersive narrative at the expense of robust interactivity. That's so timely. That's so serendipitous that we just read that. That's exactly what I was just getting at. You have to take the game on its terms. That's not me defending it. It's just, if you approach this game and you're like, dude, I want a really, really robust action-adventure game, first and foremost, the first game wasn't that. Okay? And secondly, the reviews are painting a very clear picture. Okay? This is an immersive narrative game that lacks that interactivity. It's not going to feel like a video game, okay? And if that's okay with you, then you're going to have a good time. Yeah, the game looks really good. I've seen some screenshots, and the gameplay that people are recording and uploading looks really nice. Senua Saga isn't a slow point-and-click adventure, though. It's an action game, and a tightly paced one. Like its predecessor, Hellblade II lets you complete the journey in roughly 5 or 6 hours. I applaud that restraint. Not every game needs to be long enough to devour your life. Hellblade 2 isn't bursting with content and distractions, but everything it offers is meaningful. Now, this I'm going to have to make my own judgment call on, because this sounds like a really great way to defend a short game. Right? Everything's meaningful. Every interaction, every environment, fight, person, NPC, whatever, it's all meaningful. Okay, that sounds great, but Maddie Plays told me that there's a section that takes close to an hour, he said, where you're just lighting torches. And there are also stretches where you don't really get to do anything, okay? So that, I have a hard time reconciling that with, everything it offers is meaningful, okay? There are times where you literally just walk forward for a long stretch of time. But, well, okay, is that meaningful? Now, they might say, maybe there's really great dialogue during that section or something. Maybe. We'll see. But in general, I've heard enough to doubt this claim that everything it offers is meaningful. I'm doubting this piece of praise here based on things that I have heard. Now, Maddie could have been exaggerating. You know, maybe he was not tracking the time well. You know, but he said that section was a snooze fest, right? True SSJ Havoc bumps the line to 54. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. True SSJ Havoc. A whole chapter lighting torches. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's something happening in there that is, I don't know. We'll see. Each battle sequence is a close quarters, desperate struggle against a single goon. You have a light and heavy sword attacks as well as parry and dodge maneuver. You also build up a focus meter that lets you briefly freeze time to land numerous hits. Combat is purposefully straightforward with an emphasis on pattern recognition, similar to Nintendo's Punch-Out series. That's not the comparison I expected to read. Whereas games like Sekiro and Stellar Blade make swordplay feel fancy. Here, you're flailing and scraping by to survive. Yeah, coming from Stellar Blade, I played a boss fight last night in Stellar Blade that was just phenomenal. I mean, it was just awesome. It was fast. It was frustrating in all the right ways. The character was grotesque. It was dope. It was so dope. So it'll be interesting to go to more straightforward, more basic stripped-down combat, which I'm okay with that in Hellblade. I'm not expecting anything more. I expected the combat to be very basic in this game. Lono, do you remember the torch lighting chapter in Sacrifice was freaking trippy? Yes. Yeah. Are you talking about the one where you had to stay near the torches? Or the one where you were lighting the torches to solve the puzzle? Today's the big day. Yo, what's good, Abe? By the way, that reminds me, Abe showing up late reminds me, when I was in when I was in Georgia, there was a restaurant called The Cookout, and I almost went in because you guys have told me I have an open invitation, so I almost went in and was just going to see if they would just give me a plate. But we were too busy, so I didn't get an opportunity to. But I meant to tell you guys that. I meant to try to get a picture. There was a couple restaurants, and that was the name of them. So, but I never had a chance to go in. Anyways, there aren't that many enemy types, but they are unique. We're continuing to read PC Magazine's review here of Hellblade 2. More in the middle, 4 out of 5 is their score. Fighting a foe with a shield and spear is much different than dodging an enemy who spits fire. Similar to Rise of the Ronin, Hellblade 2's simplified fighting system is effective and serves its point. What? A single gift that comes in from Stonespire. I know what Stonespire's doing. He sets up the 55 out of 75. He's hoping for a 20 bomb dunker to 75. We revoked that pass? Y'all didn't revoke that pass. That's not true. Anyway, why is this reviewer saying that Rise of the Ronin has a simplified fighting system? What did they mean by that? Ronin's fighting system wasn't... Are they saying Ronin's fighting system was what simplified coming from like Neo or something? Ronin's fighting system was complex. There was a lot going on in Rise of the Ronin. I don't know why this reviewer is saying this. Did anybody come away from Rise of the Ronin and feel like it has a simplified fighting system? Yeah, maybe they mean compared to Neo. I didn't feel like Rise of the Ronin was simple. You have 2 swords. I'm sorry, you have 2 weapons you can carry, like 8 or 9 different weapons to choose from, and you carry 2 at a time. Each of them has like 4 stances, and within each of those stances, you have like these... What were they called? Oh my gosh. Key. You have your key abilities. And I don't understand why they're saying that at all. That is very, very, very strange. A $10 super chat tip from True SSJ Havoc. Smooth made bets with this person. I don't know who these people are. That the rest of the Xbox games this year, Hellblade 2, Avowed, Towerborn, Indiana Jones, are all going to be 86 and above. Smooth always loses bets. 0 out of 1 so far. Well, listen, I've got to take an L here, okay? I've got to take an L. That launch trailer got my hopes back up, and I heard people that were sort of squealing from their review window. They were like, oh my gosh, I've seen next gen. Oh my gosh, I thought this was going to review high. I did. Yesterday. I was like, maybe we've had it wrong all along. Maybe they haven't shown us anything. Maybe they've kept it quiet. Maybe they've kept the footage, stripped down. This thing's going to come out swinging. I was wrong. I actually thought this game was going to score much higher. Based that launch trailer, people were like, what did you see? What did you see? It's like, I felt like I could finally see the game. I didn't feel like they had all these stripped down sequences where I couldn't see anything. I felt like I could finally see breadth beyond 2 feet around her. So I got to take an L on that. I did. I told y'all yesterday. I was like, dude, I think the game's going to score high. I honestly had this weird, like, back of my mind thought that maybe they've been really, elusive and not showing us stuff, and then they're going to come out swinging with the reviews, because that trailer yesterday, I thought it looked better. I was like, oh wow, we can actually see the area beyond just the person she's fighting, and I thought it looked rather good. Some guy in Mooch was saying, wait and see. I've seen the game and it's amazing. Yeah, a lot of people who had their hands on the game were making it sound like it really was going to blow people away. And it just doesn't seem to be the case. It does not seem to be the case. So. It's Hellblade 2, a tech demo for graphics and sounds. Here, I owe you guys 10 members. Here you go. I owe you 10 members for the first 50. We're a 20 bomb away from 75. We'll see if anybody takes the bait that Trill laid. You were totally wrong. I was totally wrong. I honestly thought this game's going to come out and surprise folks, and it's not. It's landing with, it's like at an 81. That's not a bad score. Let's be clear. It's not a bad score. I thought it was going to have like a triumphant, march out of like, oh wow, this game scored in the high. I said low 90s, high 80s. I was thinking 86, 88. I think I said yesterday maybe it holds on to a 90. I said, but I was thinking high 80s. And I think I was just on some hopium because it's a game that I was really anticipating. Hellblade 2 also has many environmental puzzles, which demand slightly more mental effort. Like Alan Wake 2, Hellblade 2 challenges you to manipulate the environment through dream logic in order to find the path forward. Other puzzles include manipulating light sources and lining up your sight to view hidden symbols. Some puzzles live in contained locations, but I enjoy how others seamlessly flow into each other. It reminds me of Inside. Still, as with the combat, the puzzles serve the storytelling rather than being substantial mechanics unto themselves. And I thought the puzzles in the first game were pretty good, but they were pretty basic as well. Like, they weren't, once you understood how to navigate them, they weren't that complex. This reviewer has been bought, not even hiding it. I don't think you could argue that a 4 out of 5 from PC Magazine is a bought review. I think maybe your bias against it is a little strong to think that someone praising it is obviously being paid, right? Like, something that's frustrated me with Hellblade 2 in particular is there's been a lot of talk over the last year and a half about how one side obfuscates and ignores things and puts their head in the sand. And certainly a lot of the Team Green Xbox podcasts and Xbox personas, they are blatantly guilty of this. And the people that claim to prize accuracy and being thoughtful and not arguing in bad faith, they still do it. Like, arrive at the standard that you're holding the other side to, or I don't want to hear from you. Like this morning, like when someone comes at me with bad faith and they're going to misrepresent me and be dishonest, it's like, I don't have any reason I don't want to interact with you. Go write a twit longer if you're going to lie and misrepresent me. Like, if you're going to argue in bad faith. You know what I mean? Just go write a twit longer and try to cancel somebody. That's the kind of persona you're bringing to the table. That's the energy you're bringing. Like, reading a review that's finding things to praise in a game and they give it a 4 out of 5 and you're like, oh, this is obviously a paid for review. They're obviously bought. Like, come on. Be better than that. Like rise to the standard that we constantly have said the other side fell short of last year. Right? Those who cheered on the Activision Blizzard deal and now they all want a surprise Pikachu face at all of the terrible things that are coming out of it, and the loss of brand identity and the abandonment of certain principles. Like, they all turned a blind eye to it, and they all played PR games. Like, don't do the same thing on the other side of the coin. It's just annoying. Like, I don't have any tolerance for it anymore. Let's just have a conversation. Let's just read through some reviews. You don't know this person. You don't know the person that wrote this to accuse them of being paid for. You know what I mean? Anyway, the game's action to puzzle ratio shifts as you play. The beginning has a good mix of the two before moving into the more methodical, puzzle-heavy middle section. Finally, the last third, which I can't talk about in much detail for fear of spoiling it, it picks up the pace. The action stretch has my favorite game moments by far. The sequences wonderfully convey the massive mythological mental health metaphors that give Hellblade II its identity. That's a great stretch of M words, right? The sequences wonderfully convey the massive mythological mental health metaphors that give Hellblade II its identity. That's well written. How well does it run? Here we go. Its narrow perspective lets it pump out dazzling Unreal 5 powered graphics without overwhelming your system. I played Hellblade 2 on a Series S and experienced zero performance issues despite the impressive visuals, which are capped at 30 frames per second on console. The short length also made this first-party Microsoft title an easy recommendation for Xbox Game Pass subscribers. I don't know. I don't know why you would write a review for PC Magazine and play on quite literally the weakest console in the market. That's odd to me. That seems an odd choice. I don't know. And to play it at 30 frames per second. Anyway. On PC, your rig needs at least an AMD Ryzen 2600, Intel 8400, AMD RX 5700, blah, 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 blah. So minimum of a 1070 on the NVIDIA side. For more, check out the breakdown here. But hopefully, I couldn't test the PC version. Oh, okay, so they couldn't test the PC version before release. Hopefully, it's at least 60. Okay, so it sounds like they weren't able to maybe get a copy for PC for whatever reason. Verdict. Hellblade 2 isn't a titanic tentpole holding up Xbox's shifting business plan. It's more hi-fi rush than Starfield, though hopefully not as doomed. The game commits to its vision, taking you on an intense odyssey through Senua's inner and outer worlds. It's an empathetic, interactive ode to beautiful, broken things. I think that's a good review. I feel like that's fair. They liked it, you know. They didn't give it a perfect score. They gave it a 4 out of 5. You know. Let's go back here and see if OpenCritic has moved at all. Still sitting at an 8280 on OpenCritic. 74 reviews on Meta. Let's refresh and see. Okay, so it went up to 77. Still holding at an 81. It'll probably hold on to the 81. Let's check the store page in Steam. 86%, 205 reviews. That doesn't seem right. Let me go to the actual website because I might have to close and reopen Steam. So let me use just the actual web browser for Steam instead of my launcher. Oh no, 205 reviews, 86%. Okay. I would have thought it would get more reviews by now than 205. Oh, they have super credit cards. That's hilarious for Helldivers 2 fans. Yeah, an 86% is not a bad start. You know, my thought would be, it's not going to be an explosive game. We know it's a more niche game. We know it's got smaller market appeal and smaller market reach. Like, we know this. So, just can you do a recap? Yo, Alex with a $10 super chat tip. Thank you very much. Why don't we do this? Let's go full screen here on Metacritic, and why don't we go into the reviews themselves? And let's go to the negative review. Let's see who wrote it. Okay, so we have Game Critics gave it a 45. Until now, I've liked each new Ninja Theory game more than the last, and I can never deny the craft on display. Given this is their first release since the Microsoft acquisition, I credit Hellblade 2 for not feeling compromised by corporate interest, but that only makes it more baffling as that it lacks any real vision. We'll read more in a minute. Alex comes in with a 5-bomb. Thank you so much. And bumps the line to 60. Amazing start to the week, guys. Thank you so much. I already paid up the 10 that I owe you. Let's go to the full review here. Let's go to the full review. And we'll go side by side now. That way I can give you guys I zoom in so you get like a single column. And there we go. Senua Saga Hellblade 2 review. The Order 886. Is that supposed to be a joke? Did they mean to leave off the 1? Anyway. High. Looks gorgeous, but at the cost of 60 FPS on console. Low. A tortuously unexciting puzzle gauntlet midway through the campaign. WTF. Key story beats presented like a holographic recording from Tacoma. All right. As much as it gives me no pleasure to report that Hellblade 2 made me feel very little on any level, whatever their faults, I would never accuse Ninja Theory's past titles of lacking a clear sense of direction, but I suppose it makes sense that their first sequel would be the one to break that streak. Every multi-part narrative, given enough time, eventually reaches the point where things happen for the sake of having more story. With Hellblade, we've reached that point by episode 2. It's difficult to pinpoint where exactly Hellblade 2 goes wrong when on its surface it treads closely to the original formula. One might expect Ninja Theory's first release under the Microsoft banner to be their most bloated, but initially it almost feels praiseworthy for what it doesn't do. There's no open world, no resource gathering or crafting, no skill tree that adds an extra 3% damage to Senua's strong attacks, and no upgradable bracer that increases her parry window by a fraction of a millisecond. Somebody's been playing a lot of games. By the way, guys, make sure you're smashing that like button. We have almost 1,000 viewers, which is just incredible. Thank you so much for being here. I do a daily talk show Monday through Friday. We typically start the day with an upload. Yesterday, we talked about how, Project Latitude with Xbox seems to be moving completely away from the idea of exclusives, and what does that mean for Xbox as a platform going forward. After the upload, we typically go into a live stream to discuss it. Today's a little bit different. We just kicked off the day with the Hellblade 2 review roundup. I'll be jumping into Hellblade 2 gameplay after this. It'll be a separate stream, so make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell button. You can become a member and push our member goal. Every 25, I give 5 back to the community, so you might get a membership from me or somebody here. So make sure you're here as often as possible. And then if we hit the weekly goal of 400 new members, which we're already well on our way there, we're like 118 already for the week. I got to do a scary VR game on Friday night. And the Friday night streams are fun because my wife joins me. And then every day you also get into a behind-the-scenes stream where you can see how we plan our shows with my producer. Oh, I didn't read this yet. In a climate where seemingly let me see if I can get you guys the text a little bit bigger. There we go. That's a little bit better. In a climate where seemingly every major release is a months-long commitment, there's something refreshing about a AAA video game that can be completed in a weekend and doesn't force its players to learn 100 new systems. If the mission statement with the original Hellblade was to offer a big-budget production, values at a modest scale, and for a modest price, the sequel at least upholds the tradition of not wasting too much of your time. However, while Hellblade 2 avoids many of the most frustrating tropes of modern gaming, it struggles to fill that space with anything else of substance. It can be overstated. It can't be overstated how much of Hellblade 2 is spent simply traipsing along linear paths with literally nothing to do but stare at the pretty scenery and wait for Senua to reach the next cutscene. My instinct is to say that an experience as beautiful and empty tends to arrive at the start of a console's life cycle, but when there's new tech to show off and not much else to play, but that's being unfair to forgettable launch titles. At least the action in Rise Son of Rome heated up more than once an hour. I believe it was Maddie Plays who brought up Rise Son of Rome and the Order 1886, and he felt like they did a better job. But again, I think this is well stated by GameCritics.com. That's the review we're reading right now. This is the lowest score currently on Metacritic, so we're reading to see what they're having to say. I think it is good to point out that typically games like this arrive like when the console comes out, right? just to kind of show off what they can do. I wish you would react to the Dreamcast review. It would be pure gold. I don't want to do that. I don't mind reading through reviews like this and doing a lot of my own commentary as in the form of a review roundup. I don't know if I want to go pull. Like, I watched Maddie Plays ACG and IGN this morning just to get sort of a broad spectrum of what folks were saying. And so but that was for my own edification, you know, to kind of like be able to bring that commentary to the table. So, anyway, the original Hellblade was admittedly light on mechanics, but it was a story-first fare that trapped us in Senua's vision, a version of hell, and made us question what was real, going so far as to gaslight players into believing that their save files were at risk. It was a mean, oppressive, and grueling experience. It played with audience expectations up until the very end, when it beautifully tied the experience together with an empathetic message about accepting loss and living with, even embracing, what can't be changed. That's, I think, that's just a really good summary and treatment of the first game. I like this. This is excellent. I very much agree with a lot of what is said here about the first game. I have a video right now on the channel called Hellblade II is in Trouble, and the front half of the video is essentially me talking about why the first game is just so good. Hellblade 2, in stark contrast, has no edge and no sense of purpose. With Senua's psychosis now mostly under control, the voices and visions are still there, but nowhere near as overwhelming. She's forced to wander the real world, engaging in bland heroics and preaching messages of love and acceptance across a desolate landscape of pillaging and plundering. My most charitable reading of Hellblade 2 is that it reworks the sinister imagery of its predecessor into what feels like a morality tale for children. Light versus darkness, love versus hate. I'm sure there are people out there who aren't yet convinced that empathizing with one's enemies is a more productive solution than enslaving them, but I doubt Ninja Theory will be the ones to change their minds. I'll be interested to see what I think of the story. I would go further, though, and argue that Hellblade 2 actively harms the franchise's standing as well-researched and sympathetic portrayal of mental health. The original lucidly visualized the invisible demons and people with mental health struggles deal on a daily basis, although it ultimately taught us to see Senua's psychosis as a feature rather than a bug. It didn't mince words about how self-destructive the mind can be and how torturous such an existence often is. That's why Hellblade 2, largely lacking any sense of danger, has repercussions beyond the game simply being boring. It portrays Senua as a singularly gifted force of good, and that's rarely reinforced in any of the things that we're actually doing as players. Without spoilers, there's an excruciatingly long sequence midway through the campaign in which Senua is searching for something ancient and forbidden that can only be unearthed by proving herself. These trials are hyped up to be the ultimate test, and the ground is littered with corpses of those that failed. Once there, it turns out the ultimate test is just a series of rudimentary puzzles that largely involve flicking switches in the correct order. Putting aside the arbitrary nature of these puzzles, the rune hunting exercise in the original Hellblade weren't, if it wasn't everyone's cup of tea, but at least they served thematic purpose. They're just insultingly easy. Even someone with no intuition for this sort of could bumble through using simple trial and error, yet Ninja Theory treats completion of this task like a show of worthiness on par with lifting Thor's hammer. It's infantilizing to both the player and to Senua herself, who seen by everyone in the world as some sort of mystical fairy child for essentially completing a dungeon from a junior level Zelda clone. They did not like this puzzle section. Oh my. As expected with Ninja Theory, presentation is not the problem here. They're industry leaders when it comes to performance capture. Working with Andy Serkis will do that for you. And the way its animation seamlessly transition in and out of cutscenes is remarkable, even with how much they've been spoiled by modern tech. Hellblade 2's announcements predates the Siki lockdowns, and while its long development cycle doesn't feel evident in the scope of the story, it's at least evident in the visuals and level of polish. On another positive note, the combat is still enjoyable. It's simple and easy to grasp, and the camera work, effects, and sound design sell the power of every sword swing. It worked in the original as one of Ninja Theory's tools of oppression and claustrophobia. Here, I just appreciated the jolt of energy in an experience where I was often pausing every few minutes to get up and pace around the room in order to stay awake. I mean, Maddie talked about that. He said he didn't want to be disrespectful, but he said that there was a section that was just a snooze fest, like he was trying to stay awake. So you hate to see it. You really do hate to see it. Sadly, while the fleeting combat segments are the only time Hellblade 2 builds any momentum, it's never sustained for long. The climactic moments, for all their flash and pomp, feel gamey and artificial, like the multiple instances in which Senua must run from cover to cover to avoid insta-death. That kind of thing would be a lot easier to forgive if I were engaged in the story. But alas. Yeah, there was a section last night in Stellar Blade that really irritated me. You're just like running from cover to cover and these turrets are shooting at you. And it just isn't fun. Like, you get shot once and it's basically over. Like, there's like, you're running from like cars. There's like cars to hide behind. It's a really terrible sequence. The combat in Stellar Blade is phenomenal. Anytime they make me do any kind of platforming or something like that, I'm like, no. Until now, I've liked each new Ninja Theory game more than the last, and I can never deny the craft on display. Given that this is their first release since the Microsoft acquisition, I credit Hellblade II for not feeling compromised by corporate interest, but that only makes it more baffling that it lacks any real vision that I was able to discern. It's not an offensively bad experience, and yet I can only offer one of the most damning criticisms imaginable. I have no idea why it was made. I'll be honest, I don't think this score is fair in light of everything they said. A 4.5 out of 10 is just a terrible score. I mean, that's awful. I don't think what they described is that bad. That feels very dislodged. Like, their criticisms are certainly there, but I feel like they were describing like a 6 out of 10 game. You know, like it's barely above the middle. Like, it's below a 7. Like, 7's kind of average. It's below that. Like 4.5. I mean, that's a scathing score for what we read. I didn't feel like I read us. I mean, there were elements of that review that were pretty harsh, but I didn't feel like they mounted enough criticisms to justify a 4.5. Yeah, it really was well written, though. I think it was well written, but the score feels lower than the review itself. Raven with 30 months says, "Ayo, red badge. Welcome back, Raven. Thank you so much for 30 months of memberships." It's also hard, like, what do they think a 4 out of 5, 4.5 out of 10 really means, right? What in his mind, is that a horrible, scathing low score, or is it not? When you score out of 10, it's honestly hard to know. But what we were looking at there was that's the lowest score currently on Metacritic. If we go to mixed reviews, and let's scroll all the way down. So here's another low one from Metro Game Central. They give it a 50. They say it's a joyless slog of barely interactive entertainment and a muddled portrayal of mental illness that just so happens to have the best graphics ever on a video game console. Here's GameSpots. We read GameSpots. NME. They say it's one of the most visually impressive games of its generation and contains gripping performances from both Jurgens and O'Reilly. Unfortunately, repetitive combat, lackluster puzzles, and dull traversal hamper the experience, as does a lack of focus in the wider story. See, this is something we're now hearing from multiple outlets, that there's a lack of vision, there's a lack of the story doesn't feel as good and concrete. It doesn't feel as thoughtful as the first. That's what we're hearing from a lot of these. Let's see a 10 out of 10 review. I already did a 10 out of 10 review. I mean, I'll get there again. So I did low, high, middle, and now we're looking at the lowest on Metacritic, and then we'll look at the highest. Rabbit with a $5 super chat tip says, "I always find it funny when people say it's too gamey when reviewing a game. Not that there's anything wrong with saying that, but it's funny to me." Well, I think we've gotten to a point where if a game is gamey, it's like you constantly are reminded it's a video game, right? In a game like Hellblade, I don't want to be constantly reminded that I'm playing a video game. I want to get immersed. So I think when people are saying that, they're basically it's another way of saying, you know, immersion breaking. Oh, VG247 gave it a 60. It has the power to force your jaw open and give you goosebumps. Too often, the whole project ends up feeling like a very expensive tech demo. This is quite literally what I was worried about when the previews came out. An absolute tour de force of technical achievement, bogged down in its own sense of gravitas and mystery, keeping you off the stick for so many of its most impactful moments and not giving you enough to play with when you do have control. This is something that Maddie harped on, and I've had other reviews harp on this. That, like, you aren't in control at very poignant times. Now, that's true in the first game to an extent. There are times where the camera swoops around you and you're suddenly not in control of Senua. And I think that that's fine. I think it adds a seamlessness, and it adds that, like, single camera cut feel that even, like, you know, that they do in, like, God of War. But if it, like, poignant moments in combat, I think land better. I saw somebody just this morning, they put together, it was footage from Sekiro. And it was I think, is it the owl fight? I don't know who it was. Oh, it was Genichiro, or however you're supposed to say it. I think that's who it was, and he was in the lightning phase. Second part of the fight. And, you know, I was struck by just how magnificent it looked, you know. And it really, I think, put on display. I've always said Sekiro's the best FromSoft game. I think it's the best with respect to combat. And I think that clip this morning really kind of puts that on display. But I think what it also does is, the reason that Sekiro changed me, and the reason that I ended and really just felt sort of almost transformed by the final fight with Ishin, is because I'm the one that did it, right? I did it. I did the thing. I landed the hit. I mastered the fight. And if you have combat that's more stripped down, I think that's okay. But I felt like in the first game, like when I would actually kill somebody or finish them off, like it was me. And it sounds like they went for more cinematic, almost QuickTime vibe, where a lot of these fights, you're not the one really doing the big moment. In the first, you're in control the whole time during poignant combat sequences. In this game, people have reported taking their hands off the controller and the combat sequence continues. Right, I was just getting at that, Eugene. Like, I remember feeling cool taking out a whole group of people in Hellblade 1. Like, it felt cool. Like, the way that she would, like, take her sword out and kind of strut up to the guys, and you kind of got into it, you know? And the new guys would get introduced, like the guy with the mace, and he's got, like, the mask on. Like, I remember on the bridge that eventually gets destroyed and you, like, land in the water. I remember that part because I'm the one that was fighting those guys. And I'm really worried hearing some of the things I'm hearing about how, like, yeah, you're not involved in a lot of the fights, or at the end of a fight or whatever, like the big moment. Alex with another $5 super chat tip says, I hope that the good reviews are true. I know you've been worried about this for a while. I have been. The Gamer gave it a 60. Inverse gave it a 60. Washington Post a 63. Esports 65. Hobby Consolas gave it a 70. CG Magazine 70. Worth Playing 70. MMORPG.com 70. IGN Italia 70. Pure Xbox gave it a 70. Slant Magazine 70. New Game Network 70. Forbes 70. Carol Quintain? I'm not sure how to say that. Anyway, let's go to the positives. Okay, let's start at the bottom. There's a lot of hundreds up here, it looks like. Well, maybe not a lot of hundreds. At least there's a couple. Player 2, 75. 76 from Spazio Games. GamePro Germany, 78. Pocket Lint, 80. Gaming Bolt, 80. Gamer NL, Atomics, JuVideo.com, 80, Every Eye 80, GameSub, IGN, True Gaming, PC Magazine, all 80s, Gamers RD, Game Reactor UK, Digital Trends, all 80s. Now we're in the 85s, Level Up, ZT, Gamers Heroes 90, Gfinity, Xbox Achievements, True Achievements, Game Over, IGN France, IGN Spain, these are all 90s. Press Start Australia. Windows Central gave it a 90. Is that Jez? No, that's Zachary Body. Zach Body gave it a 90 over there at Windows Central. Game Informer gave it a 90. You know, I like Game Informer's reviews. Let's read that one. Screen Rant, Silicon Era, Noisy Pixel, Hey Poor Player, IGN Brazil, the CD Action, all these are 90s. Xbox Tavern gave it a 91. They gave it an extra point. Generation Xbox 93, Gaming Trend 95, Sector, Mundo. The Games Machines gave it a 98. Somos Xbox 98. Bozzy Center gave it a 100. Games Radar, which we already read, gave it a 100. The Xbox Hub gave it a 100. Eurogamer gave it a 100. All right, we're going to check out. I like Eurogamer stuff. Xbox Era. There's some names up here, you know, I actually am surprised there were a couple Xbox outlets with Xbox in their name that were like down low. I kind of expected all of the Xbox named outlets to be up here with perfect scores. Twinfinite, Hardcore Gamer, and then Gamer.no. All right, so let's check out Game Informer here. Conquering Old Demons, and I'm actually just going to scroll down here to the bottom because they give it a 9. And they say, its conclusion ends on another strong note, and despite my initial reservations about continuing Senua's story, I walked away happy to see her conquer new monsters, both literal and metaphorical. I'm pleased Ninja Theory avoided the temptation to blow up this formula into something far bigger than needed. This is an Xbox God of War. It's a better Hellblade. The first game is a famous example of not needing to be fun in the traditional sense to be engaging. This sequel sprinkles more broadly appealing thrills while retaining the thoughtful storytelling and artistry few AAA games possess. Metacritic is too political, can't trust it. There is nothing political about Metacritic. All Metacritic does is grab scores and aggregate them for you. There's nothing political about that at all. So they seem to think, you know, Game Informer's giving it a good score. They're saying it's a better Hellblade. And that gives me hope. It really does. It gives me hope. I'm kind of getting a little antsy to play here. Let's go to Eurogamer here. Eurogamer. Oh, I forgot. Their formatting's funky. They don't like the half screen thing that I try to do. A triumphant return to a challenging story. A warrior's tale. Hey, Johnny, with the jokes. Johnny. I'm just kidding. I don't know who he is. All right, he gives it 5 stars. Hellblade 2 continues Senua's story with grace, confidence, surprising brutality, and thundering conviction. All right, I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom. We've read a lot of reviews, so I don't want to belabor the reading. That's a great shot right there. That's a really good shot. Her face just looks so good in some of the sections. Some of the screenshots I've seen. Let's see here. In short, Hellblade 2 is as confident a sequel as I've ever seen. Ninja Theory has thrown tremendous ambition with this game, and the result is equally tremendous. A lot has changed since the release of Senua's Sacrifice in 2017, not least in terms of our comfort and familiarity with mental health and mental illness as a subject matter, but if there was any doubt as to whether Hellblade could move with the times, it can be safely put to rest now. Ninja Theory has not only proven it can read a changing landscape, but that Hellblade and Senua absolutely still deserve a place of prominence within that space. So this sounds very, similar to the other one. The people that are giving it high marks are just like, it's better Hellblade, And I think that's encouraging. Obviously I've got some trepidation going into the game today. I do. I'm hearing things that are concerning. I'm hearing things that worry me. I'm like, man, this is everything I was kind of hoping they didn't do. The heavy focus on graphics, the heavy focus on production, and then gameplay suffers. So those are my concerns. But hearing from outlets like Game Informer and Eurogamer that are like, hey man, it's a better Hellblade. That to me is good to hear. The score on Steam is still an 86, and the number of reviews jumped from 206 to 232. So the reviews are starting to steadily make their way in. They're steadily making their way in. So Lono's going to love it. I really, really love the first game. So I think that, the pump is primed for me to have a better time than others. But I'm also expecting, more. Higher marks. Woke sites. It's political. Yeah, Rye, you don't know what you're talking about. So the way that Metacritic operates, all Metacritic does is it goes and it grabs everybody's scores and it just tabulates them. They don't have any control over what people give the game. Like, let's imagine that there was an outlet that said 10 out of 10, glad to finally have a boss girl game, okay? And you thought that was really woke and stupid. And because honestly, that's not a very thoughtful review, okay? Metacritic has no control over that. Metacritic just goes and grabs the review and just throws it on their website and gives you an aggregate score. They don't have control over that outlet saying something stupid or giving the game a dumb score. So Metacritic is not political at all. What you're saying is falsifiable. We can prove that it's false because Metacritic doesn't function in that way. It's just a compiler. It's literally a tool. It's basically like an API. It's like just goes and grabs everything and says, here's where people are scoring it. Rich Rod with the $2 super chat tip says, good scores due to being happy for Senua, not Game Pass. Only thing I have issue with Meta is that they give more weight to certain outlets. Oh, well, I mean, if you want to say that that's political, I mean, we can have a discussion about that. But isn't that something that you earn over time? It's not like, oh, we like your outlet more than these other outlets. I thought that the weight that they gave people was like, well, you're an established outlet, and some of these outlets are maybe newer, lesser known, maybe less credible. I don't know. I mean, OpenCritic isn't landing any differently. OpenCritic is sitting at an 82. I mean, I don't understand why you would think that there's some huge difference between Metacritic and OpenCritic. They're doing the exact same thing. 81 here, 82 here. About 70% of the sites are either two left or two right. Forgot 70% of those sites. Only look at the sites you trust, non-political. I didn't read a single review today that I felt got political. I think you're just saying stuff to say stuff, there's no thought behind it. You have to have evidence for the thought, right? If I'm going to say an outlet is doing something, like if I'm going to say that an outlet is being political, then I would need evidence to say that. You don't have evidence of that. You're just saying it. So it's just nothing. It's a nothing statement. We read through 3 reviews in their entirety, and then we read reviews and their summaries and their scores, and there wasn't a single thing this morning that we saw that I would say, oh, don't trust that review or that outlet. That's not a thing I saw evidence of today. I think the only time I saw evidence of outlets that were in... I feel like I can hear my water pump cycling, and I'm like, why is that happening? Always a little scary. My computer's not really doing anything, so that was weird. The last time, I think, and this is one of the only times, I felt like review outlets were injecting something into the review that didn't belong there was Hogwarts Legacy. Right? That was the only time I was like, get this out of the review. What the frick are we doing? Like, they'd had to, make statements about the author of Harry Potter. Like, that has nothing to do with Hogwarts Legacy, at all. You're supposed to be reviewing the game. Tell us if it's good or not. Right? I don't need to know your view of an author, right? That was the only time in the history of doing what I do that I felt like review outlets were injecting something into the conversation that just didn't belong there. Now maybe I've missed some along the way, but This guy's saying, think God of War mixed with Death Stranding. I mean, I would be careful saying something like that. That's a pretty big... That's a pretty high bar. You're talking about Santa Monica and Kojima. I mean, that's, you know, Ninja Theory is not big enough to be compared to games like that. I think that's a dangerous comparison. Like, I don't think that's fair to Ninja Theory to be like, oh yeah, their game's really good. Think God of War meets Death Stranding. It's like, slow down. Like, the scope of the game isn't even close to either of those games. You know, it's such a high bar. Anything from Kojima and anything from Santa Monica, like, that's just a very high bar. And they're also, you know, AAA backed, like very, very big funded, very, very, you know, large staff, you know, development studios. Rogue Necro with 28 months in the VIP. Good day, Lono and chat. Hope everyone's having a good day. Hey, man, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Let's go. I want to see your actual feel of the game. Think God of War meets Death Stranding with just a touch of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. You just grab like all of the greatest games ever and be like, it's just a touch of all of that. You know, that's like really unfair to the developers to set that expectation. Like, if I'm Ninja Theory, I wouldn't want you to do that. You know, I'm little old Ninja Theory, and you're out here comparing me to an award-winning Kojima game, you know, or award-winning Sony Santa Monica games. Like, no, please don't do that. Like, I don't think Returnal would want you doing that either. Like, I don't think Housemarque would want Returnal to be, you know, compared to studios and games of significantly larger size. I think that they would not appreciate that. I really wonder what's going on with my computer. I really, it sounds like something's wrong. It sounds like the water cooling system is like cycling. Hopefully it's not going bad. My computer's not even doing anything. Like, GPU's barely being used. The GPU's at 45 degrees Celsius. Like, CPU's barely being used. I don't know what the heck's going on. Just like Woke pulled down Metacritic of Stellar Blade, Hellblade got pulled up by the Woke. That's political. Yeah, I think what you're proving is that you're not worth engaging with. Like, your conversation contribution is just not good. You know, if I was to review your contribution to chat, I would give it like a 2 out of 10. Like, there's just no reason to engage with what you're saying. There was not. I didn't see a single Stellar Blade score pulled down by Woke, and I don't see a single Hellblade 2 score being boosted up by anything Woke. I don't see evidence of that. You're just saying, again, you're just saying things to say things, right? It just feels like you're parroting. You're parroting things that I guess you read somewhere else. It doesn't sound like you have original thoughts of your own. And if you do have those thoughts of your own, back them with evidence. And I know you can't, which is why I'm telling you to back them with evidence, because I know you can't do that. Wired Rope with 5 gifted members puts us at a 10 bomb away from 65 members on the day. Thank you so much, Wired Rope. Everybody shows their true colors eventually. Hellblade 2 is probably more of a 7 out of 10 than an 8 out of 10. Yeah, but that's just your opinion. You're allowed to have that opinion. See, this is what happens. Someone says the game is an 8 out of 10, and you think the game's a 7. And now you have to come up with some kind of a reason to, like, oh, they raised the score because they're woke. Like, a little bit ago, when I read a review and we got to the 4.5 out of 10, and I said I felt like that score was lower and was dislodged from what they wrote, I didn't try to justify it and say, well, they're just being a hater, or they gave it a lower score because they're a this or a that. I just made the observation that the score felt, dislodged from the review itself. When someone's giving the game an 8 and you're giving the game a 7, you don't have to come up with the reason. Oh, they raised the score because they're woke. No, they just think the game's better than you. They gave it a higher score than you. That's all. What if someone says Redfall's an 8 out of 10? Right. If someone says Redfall's an 8 out of 10, based on what we saw from not just critical reception, but from commercial reception, and based on what we saw from user scores, I would ask them to justify that. I do think sometimes you can tell somebody, I don't think your score is in line with what everybody else is saying. Why are you so outside the bell curve? And a 10 bomb comes in from Alex. He takes the bait and slams us home to 75. There it is. I owe you guys 5 more members. Thank you so much for doing that. I love the setups and the dunkers, man. That's so awesome. Nice work, boys. Like, if somebody's score is well outside the bell curve, I think it's okay to question it. Right? I think that's legitimate. Like, if everybody's giving a game like 5s and 6s and it's not doing well and everybody's saying how bad it is, it's buggy, it's glitchy, it has issues, it's clearly not finished, and someone gives it an 8, I think it's totally fair to say, you're outside of the bell curve of like basically everybody else. Can you explain why? Right? I think that's fair. I also think it's fair to say, you're an Xbox outlet and you're giving an Xbox game a favorable score. Like, can we call a duck a duck? If it walks and talks and sounds like a duck, it's a duck. Right? Like, there's a bias there. That's not an indictment of them or their character. I'm not calling them woke. I'm just like, it walks like a duck and sounds like a duck. It's a duck. William Lewis with the $5 super chat tip says, some people like to treat a review as fact when it's not. It's just someone's opinion. Yo, Rich Rod, Agent of Chaos, takes us to 76. Thank you so much. Rolls it up. I'll owe you guys 5 more when we hit 100. That'll be a huge start to the day. Sorry for the side note, but if you have hardware and monitor software on your PC, you should check your pumps, RPM, and CPU temps for irregularities. Whatever it was stopped. I don't know. It could, I don't know. It could be going bad. I can't remember. I got it replaced at a local place, and they said it was a really good one, and I think it has a warranty. I think I paid for something to where I can take it back in there and they'll fix it for me. So we'll see. I might have to do that. It stopped. Sometimes I think those systems, those cooling systems, just like cycle, and maybe it usually does it when I'm not in here, and so I just don't hear it. Or maybe it does it when I have headphones on, and I'm talking to somebody or playing a game, and I just don't hear it. It wasn't like loud or bad. It just sounded like something was cycling. All right, dismiss that. Let's get a nice air cooler next time. Fewer points of failure. Yeah, I've had people say that they recommend air systems over the water pump systems, but will you be covering the Elden Ring trailer that dropped today? Just curious. I mean, we used to do that. Today was a little bit tough. It probably would have been fun to like redirect and watch it together, and we probably would have raked in viewership. But my personal opinion is that like that's really good when that's all that's going on, or that's really good when it's like an event. But today it was just like really unfortunate timing. This is unfortunate timing. It's like Hellblade 2 is my most anticipated game of the year. It releases today, and the you know, the review embargo dropped and I wanted to do a review roundup, and I don't think it would have flowed well to just suddenly be like, oh, hey guys, we're going to go watch this Elden Ring trailer. So I don't know if it would do much good to do anything with it tomorrow. Right? We'll see. It depends on how far I get in Hellblade. You know? Hellblade 2 could, you know, have a significant, you know, I may end up doing a stream tomorrow with, like, you know, a POV on Hellblade of, like, here's what I thought, here's where I landed. I don't know. We put a lot of effort. We put a lot of effort in our upload, so I'm not sure what we'll be able to do today. Because if I play the game to completion, it'll be difficult for me to then take the time to also, it'll be difficult to take the time to, like, record and write, so we'll see where we end up. I forget, is there a way? I don't think there's a way to do this. Can you do... Like, I want to do recording so we have some footage, but I don't think I have a way of doing it. I think maybe periodically I'll just shut my camera off and we'll try to get some footage while I'm playing today. So that way we have some B-roll. Your DualSense controller isn't supported by this game. Steam input will translate the device so that you will be able to play this game, but you may not see glyphs that match your device. Oh, the buttons. I don't care about that. That's fine. I instinctively think of the buttons on the PlayStation controller. I think of them as ABXY anyway. I played so long on an Xbox. My mind already does that anyway. I'll commonly tell my kid, press X. And I'm thinking of the square button. You average FPS of 65 to 75 on high? Okay. You got an hour in before you had to go. Story looks like it's going to get just as intense as the first one. Okay. I don't really have any plans to revisit Diablo 4. I don't. It's so hard for me to re-engage. You know? I know you were playing 60 FPS for your first playthrough, but are there any plans to play the cinematic version to see how your experiences differ? No, I have noted I don't play 30 FPS games. I don't. I put down Zelda. People are like, well, what about GTA? Yeah, it'd be really easy to skip that game. I didn't do much with GTA 5. It's not really my kind of game anyway. And people are like, well, if it's 30 FPS, you can play it. And I'm like, no. You don't have to have the standards I have, and I don't have to have the standards you have. Yeah, no one's triggered by woke. They're annoyed by you because you just come in and push narratives that, they're just not appreciated. You know what I'm saying? They're not appreciated. There's no substance to what you're saying. We have a very thoughtful group here. They push back on what you're saying, or they ask for, evidence, or somebody asked you to define what woke is, and you didn't. You know? Oh, I don't want to read posts. I want to quote. Didn't Hillbilly Jack suffer through Red Dead back in the day? Yeah, but that was at a time where 30 FPS was the common way of playing games. I played Destiny at 30 FPS for a super long time. So, you know. Whoops, hang on. Okay. All right, we're going to redirect to this. I don't do gameplay that much on the channel because we're primarily a talk show. So when you guys support gameplay, it's super helpful. Do me a favor and smash the like button on the current stream that you're in right now. Take a second and do that. Let's try to hit 500 likes, okay, before we leave. And then I'm going to spam a link in chat. That's where we're going. I'll also redirect you. There's 800 people here. Even if you come and you watch for the first 45 minutes, not much is going to happen. You're not going to get spoilers. It really will help me out. So I know people might be like, oh, I don't want to see spoilers. I don't want to have the game spoiled, blah, blah, blah. If you come and watch for 30 minutes or so, 30 to 40 minutes, you're not going to get any major spoilers, and it's extremely helpful to me, okay? Just make sure you smash the like button, and make sure when we get over to the new stream, you smash the like button as well. And I'll keep the member goal up, because currently you're at, for the week, if you guys hit 100 today, you'll be right on pace to what you need. You have 134 right now. You need about 80 a day. So if we hit 100 today, that'll be about 160. You'll be right on pace with where you want to be. So, all right, I'm spamming the link in chat. I'm putting the link in Discord. And we're going to check this out. Now, there is a story so far thing you can watch. I'm not going to watch it, okay? Thanks so much for checking out this video. We are going to be diving into Hellblade 2 gameplay on a PC. It's 2080 Ti rig. I have it set at about 1440 medium with DLSS set to balanced. We're going to see if we can't get 60 FPS pretty consistently. I am playing on PC instead of Xbox Series X for that reason. I do want the 60 FPS. We did a Hellblade 2 review roundup. If you want to check that out, if you're kind of curious what everybody's saying, it's spoiler free. This play session, you know, the first hour or so probably won't be major spoilers. So if you want to watch for a little bit just to see performance, and then obviously I understand if you don't want to stay. I'm going to end the previous stream, which was the review roundup, and bring people over with redirect. Thank you guys so much for the 500 likes that you gave me on that video.